The day began like any other in O'Block. It was Tuesday, February 14th, 2017. A cold wind blew through the concrete canyons of the Parkway Garden homes. The sky was a flat gray sheet. It promised nothing special. On the south side of Chicago, mornings often arrived with a quiet tension. It was a feeling that hung in the air, a silent hum that everyone knew but nobody spoke of. People went about their business, cars passed on the street, children walked to school, their laughter a brief bright sound against the dull backdrop of the neighborhood. It was just another day. Inside one of the apartments, James Johnson, known to everyone as T. Roy, was getting ready. He was 23 years old. He carried a heavy reputation on his young shoulders. People said he was fearless. They said he was a protector of his block. To his friends, he was a brother. To his enemies, he was a force of nature. But on this morning, he was just a young man. He was someone's son, someone's friend. The streets outside were waking up. The normal rhythm of life was starting. No one knew that this rhythm was about to be broken. No one knew that a single moment would change everything. He stepped outside into the chilly air. Maybe he was going to the store. Maybe he was meeting friends. The details of his final moments are lost to the chaos that followed. He walked with a purpose, with the confidence of someone who knew every crack in the sidewalk. The streets were his home. He had grown up here. He had fought here. He had laughed here. He understood the unspoken rules of this place. The world was still quiet, still holding its breath before the start of a new day. For T. Roy, it was the last quiet moment he would ever know. The store, V. Roy's, was a familiar landmark. It was a place where people gathered, where stories were shared. It was just a regular part of the neighborhood landscape. But on this day, it would become a scene of tragedy. As T. Roy approached, the quiet of the morning was shattered. The sound of gunshots echoed through the streets. It was a sound that was both familiar and terrifying. It was the sound that signaled the end of a life. In an instant, James T. Roy Johnson was gone. The cold concrete became the final witness to a life cut short, a story left unfinished. King Von and T. Roy were more than just friends. They were brothers. Their bond was forged in the fires of O'Block. They had grown up together. They shared secrets. They shared dreams. They navigated the dangerous world of the South Side as a team. Von was the storyteller, the rapper with a gift for words. T. Roy was the muscle, the quiet enforcer who had Von's back no matter what. Their friendship was a simple thing. It was built on loyalty and shared experience. They could sit in silence for hours, understanding each other without saying a word. They had seen so much together. They had faced down rivals. They had celebrated victories. They had mourned losses side by side. Their lives were intertwined. A win for one was a win for both. A threat to one was a threat to both. They would often be seen together, just hanging out on the block. They would talk about music, about girls, about the future. They dreamed of a life beyond the concrete walls of their neighborhood. Von's music was their ticket out. T. Roy believed in Von's talent more than anyone. He was Von's biggest fan and his fiercest protector. Their connection was visible to everyone. It was in the way they looked at each other. It was in the easy way they joked and laughed. They were two sides of the same coin. Von's charisma was balanced by T. Roy's quiet intensity. They gave each other strength. In a world where trust was a rare commodity, they trusted each other completely. Their friendship was a source of stability in a life full of chaos. It was a promise that no matter what happened, they would face it together. They were a unit, a family. Simple moments defined their bond, sharing a meal, driving around the city with music blasting from the speakers, standing together on a corner, watching the world go by. These were the moments that built their history. These were the memories that became treasures. They were just two young men trying to make their way. They were trying to survive in a place that often felt like it was designed for them to fail. Their friendship was their shield. It was their armor against the harsh realities of their world. It was a bond that seemed unbreakable. The news traveled fast. It moved like a shockwave through O'Block. At first, it was just a whisper. Did you hear what happened?" Then it became a panicked phone call. They shot T. Roy. The words spread from person to person, from apartment to apartment. The normal sounds of the neighborhood died down. The laughter of children faded. The music from cars went silent. A heavy quiet fell over the area. It was a quiet filled with disbelief and dread. People started to gather in small groups on the sidewalks, their faces etched with worry. When the confirmation came, the quiet was replaced by a wave of raw emotion. T. Roy was gone. The news hit King Von like a physical blow. He was nearby when he heard. The world around him seemed to stop. The sounds of the street faded into a dull roar in his ears. His friend, his brother, was dead. It was a reality too painful to accept. The initial shock gave way to a deep, gut-wrenching sorrow. The tough exterior that he showed the world crumbled away. He was no longer King Von, the rising rap star. He was just Davon Bennett, a young man who had lost his best friend. Tears streamed down his face. They were hot and uncontrollable. He didn't try to hide them. He couldn't. The pain was too immense. He leaned against a wall, his body shaking with sobs. Friends gathered around him, trying to offer comfort. They put their hands on his shoulders. They spoke to him in low, gentle voices. But their words couldn't reach him. He was lost in his own world of grief. The image of T. Roy's face filled his mind. He could hear his friends laugh. He could see his smile. And now, he was gone forever. The entire neighborhood was in mourning. Women cried openly on their porches. Men stood in stunned silence, their faces hard as stone. The loss was a collective wound. T. Roy was a part of their community. He was one of their own. His death was a reminder of how fragile life was in this place. It was a reminder that violence could strike at any time, taking anyone. For King Von, the grief was personal and profound. He had lost a piece of himself. The world felt darker, colder, and emptier without his brother by his side. The days that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. The vibrant energy of O-Block was replaced by a heavy sadness. The community tried to cope with the loss. They held vigils. They shared stories about T. Roy. They tried to support each other. But nothing could fill the void he had left behind. His absence was a constant presence. It was felt on every corner, in every conversation. The neighborhood was changed. A piece of its spirit had been extinguished. The grief was a thick blanket that covered everything. For King Von, the pain did not fade. It settled deep in his heart, becoming a permanent scar. He poured his sorrow into his music. His songs became darker, more haunted. He rapped about loss, about revenge, about the unending cycle of violence that had taken his friend. His music became a tribute to T. Roy. It was his way of keeping his memory alive. It was his way of telling the world who T. Roy was and what he meant to him. Every verse was a tear. Every beat was a heartbeat for his fallen brother. The death of T. Roy changed King Von forever. It hardened him. It fueled him. The loss sharpened his view of the world. He saw enemies everywhere. Trust became even harder to give. The grief was a constant companion, a shadow that followed him everywhere. He carried the weight of T. Roy's death with him every day. It influenced his decisions. It shaped his art. He was no longer just a rapper telling stories about the streets. He was a survivor telling his own story of loss and pain. The bond they shared was not broken by death. It was transformed. King Von felt a duty to honor his friend's legacy. He had to succeed for both of them. He had to make it out. But the path forward was now lonelier. The person he had always turned to for support was gone. He had to navigate the treacherous world of fame and street politics on his own. The scar on his heart was a constant reminder of what he had lost. It was a reminder of the price of loyalty and the cost of life in the streets of Chicago.